say I don't like it when people clap for me, but my mic was on already, so that was fun. All right, you guys, you're here on a holiday weekend, and it's going to be 99 degrees today. I'm proud of you. Who's ready for the warm weather? I mean, we've kind of been in it already, right? It's just never ending. Who's ready for sweaters? I am, right here. So today, I am going to be talking about Speed the Light, which is something I'm super passionate about. But before I do that, I just want to jump in and say a few things. If I've not met you before, I'm the youth pastor at Real Life. I work with our students grades 6 through 12. And it is truly an honor to be the youth pastor at Real Life. In case you guys don't know this, a little secret, we have the best students around in this church. Yes, right there. There's a few of them. They're the best. Here's what I love about them. I love that they are goofy, right? They're weird. They do weird things. But here's what I also love. I love their passion for Jesus. I love that our students want to dig in and figure out not just what does the Bible say, but what does it mean for their life? What are they supposed to do with it, right? Because we can read the Bible, we can become familiar with Scripture, but if we don't figure out what we're supposed to do with it, how we're supposed to apply it, it's kind of useless, right? So I love that our students want to dig in and figure that out. I love that our students love to serve. So before service, whoever is involved Sunday morning in the auditorium, we pray together. This morning, most of the people that prayed for service today were teenagers. They're on the cameras, they're in the tech booth, they serve in kids ministry. I love that our kids serve. If we do a service project, is Basil in here? He was on host team today. Basil, are you in here somewhere? Or is he might be serving somewhere else this morning too, but he came to serve day all by himself. We do a serve day in July. Basil biked here. He served all morning with a smile on his face. He stayed late and helped us clean up. And his response was, I can stay and help. I biked here myself. I can go home when I want. It was awesome. But so to see students just want to dig in and be a part of community with our church is amazing. So thank you, parents, for the opportunity to work with your kids because they're great. Also, thank you, parents. Rose, I'm going to call you out. I loved this morning. Eliana was kind of sitting right there, and Rose is like, get up and go talk to people. I love watching our parents parent their kids because they want the best. You guys want the best for your kids, and I love it. So thank you for allowing me to partner with you. And then a quick shout out, another secret. Hopefully parents know this. We have also the best youth leaders around. We really, really do. We have an amazing team of youth leaders that love kids in the hard times and the times where they're weird and crazy hyper. They love kids. They'll run around this building in the middle of the night after NYC playing night games with Brenna. Brenna's amazing when it comes to night games at all-nighters because she 100% right there, even after not sleeping for a day at NYC. But we do all the goofy, funny, silly, weird things with kids. Last year, we went to a girl's house on her birthday in Halloween costumes. It was not Halloween, but it was fun. Our leaders are willing to jump in and just love on kids. But the best part the best thing that I see our youth leaders do regularly is I get to sit back and watch small groups. Every Wednesday night, small groups spread around this room, and just watching our leaders invest into kids and ask kids questions or answer the hard questions kids have. It's the best. So if you see a youth leader, man, love on them because they do an amazing job loving on your kids. Adam Tewsted is designed to be a camp counselor. He is the best camp counselor in the world because he makes sure every kid is included. I could go around about all of our leaders and just say how amazing they are. So just know you have an amazing team of people loving on your kids, and we are so excited for midweek to start on the 13th so that we can be with your kids again on Wednesday nights. So just a little few things that I just wanted to take a chance to tell you. And then today we're going to jump into talking about Speed the Light. And the reason I love talking about Speed the Light is so much more than a fundraiser. We'll talk about what Speed the Light is in a minute if you don't know. Yes, we raise money, that's part of it. But the thing I love about Speed the Light is that it really is a tool to help students develop their skill sets, develop their giftings from God, and to see them catch a heart for the lost. That's what it's all about. catching God's heartbeat for the lost. I have a quick video for you guys to watch, so go ahead and turn your attention to the screens for this video.
We serve the greatest giver of all time, who caused his son to join mankind. He left the riches of heaven for open wounds without stitches, brought us healing we weren't seeking in the name that is above all things. Yet he remains hyper aware of every heartbeat, never missing a dull moment, the only God who sees, present through our collective and personal histories. He knows us by name, as well as the parts of the world who have yet to learn his, so he stirs your heart, brings the heartbeat of all 9,459 corners of the world to your headspace, prompts you to catch a glimpse of his heartache, lets your heart break for the world with your eyes wide open, then asks you to allow this to be more than just a heartbreaking moment. See, the Great Commission demands that you go. It's the fear of failure and comforts that tie us to our home. But beyond this mini moment wrapped up in a poem, there is a voice in your mind whispering to you, and you know the miracle of your conversion is a mind-boggling thing. You can break it down, but you'll never fully explain it. He is relentless and a romantic nonetheless. Need I remind you how he wooed you onto himself, met you in your corner of the world, extended himself as a remedy for your hurt, and now is asking that you would extend the invitation of you. It is no small task, but he is a great God, searching for willingness more than a skill set. The body of Christ is the hope of the world today. So why believe the lie that you've got nothing to say? Excuse your excuses for a moment and trust this. He loves the whole world and is making all things new. So step outside of your walls without context or clues. Show up when you're scared and unsure. Show up when you can't pinpoint what for. The answers aren't in you, they're in the cross. So don't turn a blind eye to a world that brings tears to his and tugs at his heartstrings. Instead, would you catch the heartbeat, run your race with God's speed, and leave your mark on eternity? Excuse your excuses, please. It is not about needing more time. You serve the maker of time. Don't waste another moment. Move now until all know.
There's a few things that I love about that video. I love the line where she said, extend an invitation of yourself. Share yourself with the world. Right? Share yourself with your community. Share yourself with the people that God has put in your life. And I also love the challenge of excuse your excuses. Like, let's be done with them, right? We all have excuses for why we don't do certain things. And it's time to kind of just set those by the wayside and move forward. So that's partly why we do Speed the Light. That's what Speed the Light is. In case you're new to real life or new to the Assemblies of God, I want to take just a few moments to break down Speed the Light, what it is, so you know what we're kind of talking about this morning. The concept of Speed the Light is super simple. We give so that others can speed the light of the gospel into a world of darkness. This is accomplished by providing essential transportation and creative communication equipment for missionaries around the world. And here's what is awesome about Speed the Light. It's student initiated. It started with a group of students, and it's continued with a group of students that are passionate to see their world changed. It provides funding across the nation in over 180 countries, and it was started in 1944, and over 79 years later, get ready for this, teenagers, student-initiated, $325 million has been raised. That's a lot. $325 million, you guys, that is a lot of money. That is a ton of money to help equip missionaries to spread the gospel, to speed the light to a dark world. And I know our students have heard this a million times, probably from me. They say that in Speed the Light, every dollar represents a soul. That's 325 million souls that have heard about Jesus as a result of young people. Pretty amazing. Speed the Light also serves as a discipleship tool, teaching students to live a life of generosity and helping them see the need to share the gospel with those that do not know Jesus. For me, that's the biggest part. Helping kids catch that heartbeat of God for the world around them. Some things that Speed the Light is also about: Convoy of Hope. Who's heard of that before? We've taken offerings for Convoy of Hope. That's who shows up when natural disaster strikes, right? They show up and meet basic needs. Youth Alive That one may be less familiar for some of you. Minnesota is very, very blessed. Some states do not have a Youth Alive missionary at all. We have 3 that work through our Minnesota student ministers at the district office. And their whole mission is to equip students to reach their campus, right? So they do that through school assemblies. They do that through campus, they do campus coaching for youth pastors and how do you get on your campus. They do that kind of funnels. AIM is kind of funneled through some of that with one of those staff members. And then a really cool thing that they've done over the past few years with the 3rd person they added to that team is my friend Kelly. She does student engagement. You guys, on any given week, that girl will drive to any corner of the state, all over the place, to connect one-on-one with students that want to reach their campus. That's amazing to have someone through our district office that can do that. I saw someone, you know Kelly, I take it. I saw some of you are doing thumbs up. It's amazing that we have people that can support students in that way. And part of that is because of Speed the Light. That's where some of that funding comes from. And again, most of all, the most important thing for me is it's a discipleship tool. Speed the Light is, again, so much more than a fundraiser. As a youth pastor, I love seeing students kind of get a little passion burning inside of them to make a difference in their world. For them to recognize that they don't have to wait until they have a big kid job or they're grown up and they're adults, they're out of college, but that they can do something now. As a 6th grader, Pastor Eric has done the same thing with BGMC and kids ministry. As young kids, they are seeing that they can make a difference in this world and that they can be a part of something bigger than themselves. I love seeing the creative things that kids come up with. You guys, there's a girl, I don't even remember how much money she raised many, many years ago. She made chapstick and sold it and made a crazy ton amount of money. There was another girl who helped milk the cows on her family farm and made a ton of money for Speed the Light. Just seeing what kids come up with. We had a student here design and sell t-shirts and made a lot of money for Speed the Light. And it's not about, again, the money, but it's about what inspires a kid to do that. What inspires a kid to action, to making a movement forward, is what Speed the Light is about. Many, many years ago, at the time, Pastor Mark, he's now our superintendent, but at the time he was our DYD, district youth director, and we met as a group of youth pastors. We do this every spring, and we just dream about what could God do through Speed the Light in the state of Minnesota. And I will never forget this year. I've never really seen Pastor Mark look nervous, but he just kind of stood in front of all the youth pastors, and he just looked nervous. And he said, I have a dream, but I'm afraid to say it out loud. And we're like, what? Just tell us. And he did, and his dream was, I think God wants Minnesota to give $1 million in 1 year to Speed the Light. At that time, that was unheard of. That was not a thing, that did not happen. And we're like, yes, let's do it. Let's get behind this. And you guys, we've never raised less than that since, as a state. This past year, Minnesota raised $2.6 million. Just Minnesota. $2.6 million. You guys, this year, our students, with your help, raised $25,000. The year before that, we raised 10, which is still a lot, right? But to go from 10,000 to 25,000 during a time where economy is hard, that's a God thing, right? We can't do that on our own. That's a God thing. Some of the things I've seen kids do over the years, we had a student one year literally give their whole savings account to Speed the Light because God was speaking to his heart. We've had lots of kids, and I think some of our girls coming up are going to continue this tradition, bake all the things and sell them to you at church. Even Missy Byers one year, I don't know how many dozens of cookies you made, Missy. A lot. Because, Missy's cookies, they're magical. But people have gotten really creative with baking. Dinner and a Show, I can't wait. If you have never come to Dinner and a Show, it is coming up in November. You need to come. It's such a fun night where we showcase their talents. They come up with fun things to do. I mean, Pastor Taylor and Ryan, they were our MCs last year, and there was nothing like that before. I loved it. Everything about it. And then we just have a lot of fun. We eat some food and we raise a lot of money for missions. So that's a lot of fun. I've seen kids do craft sales, yard work, babysitting, participate in 30 for Freedom. That also is a part of Speed the Light. I've seen people give their own money that they're owning at work, and so many more things. I love it. I love seeing what kids come up with as ideas. And again, it's not about, I'm going to say this probably a million times, it's not about the dollar amount, but it's, again, what is inspiring a student to action? That's what it's about, a heartbeat for the lost, a heartbeat for people that don't know Jesus. That's what inspires a group of teenagers to say, let's raise $25,000 for missions in 1 year. It's a big deal. The reason I share these examples is because one thing I am always continually amazed by, I've been a youth pastor I'm old, so for a long time, and I'm still always inspired by young people and the things they come up with, because they're creative and they continually come up with new things to raise money for missions. And it reminds me, like, man, I need to keep doing something. If I'm going to ask them to say, okay, guys, what is God asking you to do? What's he calling you to do? Let's step out in faith. Man, I better be doing it too, right? I can't ask them to do something I'm not willing to do myself. So students, thank you for inspiring me. I think you inspire other adults in this room too, because you guys have a story and you're telling it. It's pretty remarkable. Last summer, when I shared about Speed the Light, we talked about the lifeguard group. I don't know if you guys remember that. Not this past summer, but the summer before, we had a group of students that were able to go on a mission trip to Montana, and we worked with a group called the Lifeguard Group. And their whole focus is helping rescue and restore victims of human trafficking. So what we did, as they were in the process of opening up a space that was going to actually be a safe house, so we went and I don't know how many barrels of rocks we toted around. We did a lot of hard manual labor on that trip to help get the ranch ready for the people to come. And the cool thing is that ranch is now open. They now have people there. I was able to actually go back and visit at the beginning of the summer as part of my sabbatical. I went and spent a week with Lowell and Tammy, and it was amazing to see the progress at the ranch. They have a studio that is now finished, but that's going to be for dance therapy and yoga therapy, and it's beautiful. It's like top of the line. Julie, you would love it because it is a beautiful studio. They have equine therapy that they're doing. They're doing art therapy. The residents are seeing clinicians during the day. They have someone kind of creating their plans for what their day is going to look like. And they have people there now. They have people that have been rescued from that lifestyle that are now there receiving healing, receiving hope, right? And one of the things we raised money for was to help them get what they're calling a crisis response unit. So Lifeguard Group does a ton of different things. Like, yes, the ranch was kind of what we're the most familiar with that went, which is what you guys have heard about, but they're consistently going out on rescue missions as well. They have a hotline where they get tips in on potential victims of human trafficking, and then they go out and they start searching, or they go to the truck stops. Because Montana is really a big state for human trafficking because it's a trucking state. So they'll go to truck stops. They go to places where people would be. And right now I know they're kind of in the thick of 4 pretty intense missions, or rescues that they're trying to find some people. And here's what I love about Tammy and Lowell. They're the real deal because they bring Jesus into it too. Right? A lot of people can jump on board with yes, human trafficking is wrong. We should not be okay with that in our world, but then to take it another step and introduce Jesus, right? Because that's where the ultimate hope and healing will come from for these women. Be praying for them. You guys, their ministry is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart. One of the women that came to stay with them since they've opened actually left her kids there, and they're pretty sure she went back to her trafficker. That's hard, right? It's hard to imagine. So the ministry that they do it's hard. So be praying for them, be praying for the Lifeguard Group, and know that our church is helping them accomplish the mission that God's put on their heart in reaching the broken of the broken by the crisis response unit we help them purchase. So just a little update for you on that. I think it's good for you guys to hear, like Pastor Taylor was saying, like what happens when you guys are so generous. We want to follow up with that sometimes to make sure you hear the stories of what God is doing through your giving and your generosity. This year, we're going to continue to raise money for the hope of seeing people rescued and restored from human trafficking. And then we're also going to be working with World Serve to help provide water wells in parts of Africa where they do not have clean water readily available. So you guys will be hearing about that throughout the year as we kind of focus on that during our school year. So now I'm going to shift a little bit. We feel like we know what Speed the Light is, why it exists. Cool. So we're going to shift a little bit and talk about why is it important? Like, why do we do it? Why does it matter? And really it matters. We do Speed the Light because we've all been called to make disciples. Every single person in here, we've all been called to make disciples. We are called to be an active part of fulfilling the Great Commission. It's important to make sure that everyone's aware of what the Great Commission is, because according to George Barna's research, anyone here heard of George Barna? He's like a research dude. 51% of all churchgoers have never heard of the Great Commission. And only 17% can correctly identify the passage and its meaning. And even more alarming is that in terms of the millennial generation, so each generation there's a decrease in how many people know what the Great Commission is. Only 10% of millennials have heard of the Great Commission of current churchgoers. That's concerning because the Great Commission really is kind of a pillar of how we're supposed to live our daily life, right? Like, it really is our daily charge. So we want to make sure, I think our percentage is higher. But we still want to just make sure, right? So we're just going to take a look really quick at Matthew 28, 18 through 20, and it says, "And Jesus came and spoke to them, saying, 'All authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of age.'" So this passage of Scripture, it's vital to our walk with the Lord. The center of our identity as Christ followers is tied to what he asks us to do, right? That's tied to what he asks us to do. And as Christ followers, our identity is to be bearers of Christ's mission and make disciples of all nations. We're called to reach our world. Sometimes that might mean God calls you into overseas missions. Awesome, we are here to support you. Sometimes that means God's going to call you to vocational ministry. Awesome, we're here to support you. Most times, it means God is going to call you to be a doctor, a teacher, a postal worker, a barista, a Target cashier, a parent, right? It's more common that we are called to work outside of the church, yet we're called to make disciples. That doesn't change. That's the same for all of us. And it's important to understand that we all have a mission. We all have a mission field. And really, we're all called to be kind of like mini evangelists to the world around us, right? Wherever we are, whoever we're around. Earlier in the book of Matthew, Jesus tells his disciples that they're to be fishers of men. Hence the bobber. If you didn't get one, there's probably some left, and you can grab one on your way out. But I like just a visual sometimes, I think is helpful. So in Matthew 4, 18 through 22, it says, "While walking by the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, who was called Peter, and Andrew, his brother, casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen. And he said to them, 'Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.' Immediately they left their nets and followed him. And going on from there, he saw two brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and John, his brother, in the boat with Zebedee and their father, mending their nets. He called them. Immediately they left the boat and their father and followed him." These passages are both pretty straightforward. Go make disciples. Follow me. Be fishers of men, right? We're supposed to reach the people around us. There's an author, her name is Rebecca Pipett, and she has a book called Stay Salt. And in that book, she recounts a story where she was speaking at a convention, and she'd asked people, what are some of the things that come to your mind when you hear the word evangelist? And here was the feedback that she got. Pushy, rude, intrusive, they don't listen, and they're focused on their agenda. So then she asked a follow-up question. Can you describe to me in a few words that person who most influenced you to become a Christian? And this is what she said. What was said. They're loving. They listened. They were non-judgmental. They took me seriously. They looked for the good in me. They appreciated my questions. They were available, and they were hospitable. What that tells me is relationship matters. Right? The personal relationship matters. The personal relationship has significant impact if we're intentional with how we build them. The staff has been reading this book by Craig Rochelle, kind of in the spring and summer. And I just heard Pastor Taylor, there's some one-liners in that book, right? Yeah, I don't remember the actual name of the book. Lead Like It Matters? Lead Read like it matters. That's it. But it's a really, really good book. And we actually just read a chapter that really kind of focused on this whole topic of, are we reaching people that don't know Jesus? And one of the things that he says that stood out to me in that chapter is, I'd argue that many people today are not rejecting Christ as much as they are rejecting the church. Perhaps more specifically, they are rejecting judgmental Christians. Ouchie a little bit, right? Yeah. He goes on to say, what's odd is that the churches that appear unfriendly to outsiders can be full of the friendliest people in the world, but only if you're an insider. Now, I don't share that to beat you guys over the head with a bat, because I don't think that's actually true of our church. One really consistent piece of feedback we get from people that visit our church is, man, it's so friendly. A friend of mine started coming to church here, and she asked me, she goes, how do you make your people be so friendly? And I'm like, we don't, they just are. It's really great. They just are very friendly. So I don't think that those statements, again, are true of real life. But here is the reality. Those statements made me reflect on my own life. It made me go, okay, when I'm not in the walls of real life church or the walls of my home, but when I'm out in the community, when I'm out in my neighborhood, when I'm spending a Saturday running errands, going to a bunch of different stores, what do people see in me? Do they see the Jesus that I love in me? Or do they see someone that's so busy just trying to get life done that I look no different than anyone else? What do people see in me? What do people see? That's what it's caused me to think. So when I've been running errands, when I'm walking in my neighborhood, am I actually taking the time to maybe look up from my phone and make eye contact with somebody? To then signify hey, I see you, Becky, and I want to talk to you. Am I taking time to do that in my day-to-day life? And am I remembering one thing that Pastor Craig also says in this book? We have to remember that Jesus came for those who are lost, broken, hurting, disenfranchised, alone, overlooked, poor. Jesus came for those who religion rejected. Am I watching for those people when I'm not here? Right? Am I doing that in my own daily life? Because again, I can't say to you guys this morning, hey, we need to do this, and then be like, good luck, I'm out. I have to do it too, right? We're in this together. We're not doing this alone. Pastor Craig continues to write, they love the comfort of their Christian bubble so much they're not willing to follow Jesus as he tried to lead them to become friends with sinners, and so that they can seek to save the lost. He goes on to ask the hard question, who do you love? If you love God, you should love people. If you love God, you should love people. If you do not love people, you do not love God. We're called to love those who aren't like us, and especially called to love those who are far from God. And the thing that gets tricky with the word love, it's used for so many, I love pickles. Anyone that knows me knows I have a deep adoration for pickles. But is that the same way I love Jesus? Man, I hope not, right? It's not. The way I love Jesus is very, very different. As much as I love pickles, they don't dictate how I live my life. I mean, they might dictate what grocery aisle I walk down, so maybe for a minute. But they're not going to dictate the big decisions in life. They're not going to dictate how I treat somebody that I maybe met for the first time, or if someone that I see is hurting, or maybe even someone who's hurting and doesn't know Jesus and has wronged me, right? That's Jesus. So when it talks about, do you love people, I don't think it's the general, yeah, I love people. I think everyone in this room would say that. Otherwise, it'd kind of be weird that you're at church, right? That's just a natural thing. Church people yes, I love people. But do we love people enough that we're stepping out of our comfort zone to love people different than us?
That's good.
And do we love people when we get nothing in return? Nothing in return. So I think that's a danger that we just need to be aware of and think through. In Galatians 1:10 it says, am I trying to win the approval of God, or am I trying to please men? If I'm trying to please men, I would not be a servant of Christ. We have a choice every single morning when we wake up. Every single morning when we open our eyes, and really we have this choice multiple times throughout a day. And it's three things. We can choose to not serve God, We can choose to serve God, but in a way that very few people will really know. Or we can choose to serve God and go public with it. Make it known to the world around us that we love Jesus. And really, at that point then, kind of make hell regret that we were even born, right? Make Satan regret that we were even born, because we're going to do something for the kingdom of God. We're going to go public. We have that choice every single day. There are 2 important days in your life: the day you were born and the day you discovered why. Why were we born? It goes back to that Great Commission, right? It goes back to we were born, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us are serving Jesus, have a relationship with Jesus. Next step, we're called to be a part of the Great Commission. We're called to be a part of that. And lots of Christians make the same major mistake. They let Christianity be focused on the defense rather than the offense. What's the result? They get bored. Okay? Christians allow their Christianity to be focused on the defense rather than the offense. And what's the result? They get bored. Nothing you do halfway is fun. You eventually get bored, right? So helping people find and follow Jesus is a lot of fun. That is one thing I love working with teenagers. One of the reasons I love working with teenagers, to see those light bulb moments, those aha moments where they're just like, oh, I get it now. That is so fun. It is so fun to see them get it and then run with it, right? So how much more fun is it if you see someone who doesn't even know Jesus have that aha moment because of their relationship with you, and then they run with it, and they run with Jesus. It's a lot of fun. I think of my friend Allison. Her and I work together at Fraser. She's probably one of the people I'm closest to in life. Very, very close friend. Does not know Jesus. We live life very, very differently. But can she still be a close friend that I love? She sure can be. And here's the reality of Allison and I's friendship. We were on the phone the other day. Don't worry, I was using my hands free in my car. Someone cut me off or something, and I was like, blah, blah, blah. Like I felt like I freaked out a little bit, because I've shared with you guys, I struggle when I drive sometimes. And she goes, you're so patient and when people do dumb things on the road. And I was like, oh, really? Because I felt like I was not very patient in that moment. She goes, this is what I would have been doing. And she rattled off this list, and I was like, oh, yeah, I don't do that. But there's been countless times where Allison will be like, you do things a little different than I do. And you know how I take that? I take that, oh, she's seeing Jesus. Because that's the only difference between Allison and I, is Jesus, right? So every time she says something like that, which is fairly often, like, oh, I don't know how you handle that situation like that. Oh, it's Jesus. So my prayer is that in my relationship with someone like an Allison, is that Jesus just seeps out a little bit all the time. I love it. Allison just recently had to have her pet put down, which is always hard if you're a pet person, right? One of the first people she reached out to, she said, was me, to say, hey, we're doing this today. Can you be praying for us? It's because the Jesus that she's seen little by little, right? Piece by piece. Not forced, not with a weird agenda like people had said about evangelist, but just simply by being who I am. A lot of times, Julie and I were talking about this a few minutes this morning, a lot of times I think we make sharing the gospel way more complex than Jesus ever intended for it to be. Way more complex. So then what happens is we just kind of close that folder or close that book and say, that's for another day. That's too confusing. It's too hard. Don't have the capacity today. I'm just going to set it on the side. And really, it's actually pretty simple. One way that we can help fulfill the Great Commission is just by learning to be a good friend. Simple. You don't have to have a perfect message. You don't have to have an answer to every theological question someone might ask you. You don't have to have $1 million to go buy all the things for people. You don't have to have the perfect church event to invite them to. You just have to be their friend. That's it. Just be their friend. Be consistent. Be all the things. Where's that page? That Rebecca wrote about in her book. Be loving. Listen to people. Don't judge people. Take people seriously. Look for the good in them. People need that. People are good at telling themselves all the bad. If you're the one person that can tell people the good things in them, man, that's going to be a game changer for them. Appreciate their questions even when they're hard. And here's the deal. People are going to ask you hard questions. If Jesus starts kind of seeping out of you a little bit, they're going to ask you the hard questions. And if you don't have an answer, it's okay. I don't. Sometimes I'm like, man, that's a great question. Let me dig in a little bit and get back to you. That's acceptable. That's okay to say. And then when you actually follow up with the person, it's actually going to speak louder than just trying to make up an answer on the spot. Right? Because you took the time to figure it out for them. Be available for people. That's what it's all about. So I have a couple points that I want to talk about this morning before we jump into Connect questions that are just really super practical. Because sometimes you guys serving God, there's practicality in it too, right? We don't need to make everything complicated. So my first point is assign high priority to your relationships. Be intentional. And I will add, I'm not talking about your church friends here. Yes, of course, be intentional, especially with your life group people. Like people you're doing life with, I'm not saying don't be intentional with them, but don't limit it to just those relationships, right? Jesus was a person who put high priority on relationships. That's how he developed his relationships with his disciples. He became their friend. And here's the reality. Sometimes it's easier to just kind of keep to ourselves or keep to our church people because it's safer. It doesn't hurt as much maybe sometimes. But even Jesus, his disciples were not always the greatest, right? They denied him. They did different things at different times. So again, Jesus models that. Love people no matter what they do. Love people intentionally. We make the mistake of assuming that all good friendships will just happen. They won't. I hate, if I'm here and I'm bursting your bubble, I'm sorry, but someone had to. Close and good, meaningful relationships are not going to just happen. So even more so, they're not going to just happen with people that don't know Jesus, because they don't even happen with each other, just by chance, right? They take some work. But the older you get, the more we have to choose to really work at cultivating true relationship, because we're busy. Not that kids, you guys are busy too, but secret, you're just going to get busier. Like we are busy, adults are busy. So we have to be intentional. One of my favorite verses in Proverbs 18:24 says, there is a simple key to having a lot of friends. You just have to show yourself to be friendly first. Put your phone down, look at people, talk to your cashiers, like be friendly. Take the first step, take the initiative. I just love that it's just so simple, matter of fact. You have to first show yourself to be friendly. We're not always good at that because we're busy, right? We're just trying to get through the things. So take the time. The second point this morning is we need to cultivate transparency. Transparency doesn't just happen. You have to cultivate it. Go beyond the how are you and get to the, no, how are you really? Like, I care. I want to know how you really are, not just the, oh, I'm good. If you truly are, awesome. But I care about if you're not, too. We lead people through our strengths, of course, but here's the reality. We connect with people through our weaknesses. I don't know about you guys. I want to do more than lead people. I want to connect with people. Because when I connect with people, like in Allison, that's where she can start to see the little Jesus in different situations in my life, right? If I'm just trying to lead her, she may or may not catch some of those things, but if we connect, it's a whole different thing. And how do we do that through our weaknesses? Man, when she called me about her dog, man, I'm so sorry, Allison, I can relate. That was really hard when I had to have Maggie put down. And we connected over it, right? She knew she wasn't alone, so take the time to connect. The world is looking for real friendship, for real relationships, for real community. Yeah. How many of you are in a life group in this room? How many of you would say, man, that community is so important to me? It is to me. I love my life group. I would not be the same without them, wholeheartedly. The world outside needs that just as much as we do. They need that real community, those real relationships. They need people that are going to be in the mountaintops with them, and they need people that are going to be in the valleys with them. The lowest of the low, the highest of the high, and everything in between. They need people. Long before the world will buy into Jesus, they will buy into the atmosphere of real friendship. That's the connecting piece for people. So cultivate a place where people feel safe to tell each other what's going on. And then here's the kicker. be quiet and don't repeat that information, right? Because as soon as honesty dissipates from a relationship, it's done. Transparency is done, right? So when people share things with you, like hold that in high regard and pray for those things and keep that between you unless they give you permission to share it. Because that is a lot of times when I talk to people, why they won't come to church. They've been so hurt by relationship and hurt by things that they shared in confidence that weren't left in confidence. So it's important, it matters. And then the third point this morning is don't give up, always go after the one. In Matthew 18:12-14, it says, "What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hill and go look for the one who wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about the one sheep than the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing to let any of these little ones perish." Go after the one. Always. Don't give up. I know I've shared this before, but I had a friend in junior high. I grew up in a really unique family situation. If you want, let's get coffee, I'll tell you about it. It's quite the story. But I did not grow up in the church. I grew up a very hurting, broken kid. Went through a lot of stuff, a lot of hard things. Moved to my dad's house in 7th grade, which junior high is just middle school, but it's a hard time in life. Like people just, I don't know. It's not the kindest time in life. Students aren't the kindest to each other at that age. But I met this girl, Joy, and she kept inviting me. She didn't tell me it was youth group, in all honesty. That's what's kind of funny. I probably would have gone a lot sooner if she had just told me it was church. But she kept inviting me. She was called, come, it was called The Back Door, was the name of the youth group. She goes, come with me. I was like, that sounds weird. In my head, it sounded like a place where you go do drugs. And I'm like, I don't do that. And you don't seem like you do either. So no, not going to do that. But she kept inviting me. I mean, I said no to this girl every single week. But there was something about Joy where we were good friends. Like she cared about me. She saw me. She noticed me. And then one week she finally said, will you just come to church already? I was like, oh, sure. I'll go to church with you. So students, tell people what you're inviting them to. It matters. Right? It's helpful. But I finally went to church with her. But you guys, I'm so glad she never gave up. I'm so glad she never stopped asking. Because I don't know that I would be here today in front of you guys, serving Jesus in ministry, working with your amazing students. But she never gave up, even though I, in a sense, rejected her every single week. Right? She never gave up. Thanks. And then the cool thing is, because I started going to youth group with Joy, I met Pastor Dave and his wife, Rindy. And again, I came in a really hurting, broken kid with a lot of family trauma, a lot of things I had to figure out. And when they talked about how God loved you like a father, I was like, my parents are not the best apples out there, so no thank you. But there's something about these people. There's something about the people in this room and the way they care about me and the way they love each other and the way they do life that's enticing to me, so I'm going to keep coming. They saw the hurting, they saw the brokenness, they saw the pain, they saw the despair, all the things that I was feeling, and they just loved me where I was. Eventually, I was at everything. I was at youth group all the time. I was at all the events. I was even on like a student leadership committee. Still didn't know Jesus, but they found tasks for me to do because it was their way to love me. And then they brought in a guest speaker for an event. Do you guys remember the era of ministry where we did like events in blacktop parking lots in the summer under a vinyl tent? I still think that's really weird. But we were having one of those events. So I was outside, and it was called Outbreak, which is a weird name for an outreach too. But at this event, my friend, now good friend, James Grogan was there speaking, and he gave an altar call one night, and I just kind of said, you know what, I think I'm finally going to try this. What can it hurt? It can't be a bad choice to just try it. These people seem legit. They don't do drugs. After I'd gone to youth group for a while and realized they were all good people. And I'll never forget the Wednesday night I decided in the middle of July, in the heat, under that vinyl tent in the blacktop parking lot of Buffalo Assembly of God Church, to go forward and give my life to Jesus. and it's never been the same. My life has never been the same. But I had a friend who was intentional. I had a friend who saw the hurt, who saw the pain, who saw all the things, and decided she wasn't going to give up on me. I had a friend who created a space for transparency. I had a friend who just walked life with me. Joy never sat down and said, okay, Miranda, here's the deal. Here's the gospel. Here's what you need. Here's the answer. And even if she had done that, that's not bad, because there's times where that's what God asks us to do as well, right? I'm not saying that that's bad. It's not. But in this case, I just needed a friend who was going to hang with me for as long as it took. And she hung with me for as long as it took. She didn't give up. She didn't stop caring. She didn't have an agenda. But here's what she did do. She took time to notice me in the middle of her busyness. She took time to notice the hurting new girl that moved to Buffalo, Minnesota in 7th grade and didn't have any friends. She took the time to look around her surroundings to see me. I'm going to jump back to the book from Pastor Craig. He asked this question, who do you love? Do you love people that don't know Jesus? Another pastor, kind of building off from that, said, are you close to people who are far from God? If you're not close to people who are far from God, catch this. You're not as close to God as you think you are. That's ouchy too, right? Because God's heart is always for the people that are far from him. And in order to be close to God, right, we need to know God's heart, which means by proxy, we're going to have a heart for the lost. I just want to read that quote again. Are you close to people who are far from God? If you are not close to people who are far from God, you're not as close to God as you think you are. And again, I don't mean that, you guys, as a bat over our heads, but I mean it as a, man, if we need to, let's make some movement forward. Let's expand our circles of friendship if we need to. Let's look up from our cell phones when we're out in the community doing life and notice the people around us that don't know Jesus. So it goes back to the bobber, right? We're called to be fishers of men. Now, I would not claim to be a fisherwoman by any stretch of the means, but one of the things that I loved doing when I moved to my dad's house, we lived across the street from my grandparents, and my grandpa and I would go fishing. I could have cared less about the fishing at that point. It was about time with my grandpa. And here's what I learned. Again, I don't know much. I won't put a worm on my hook. Again, not an expert. But I know when it comes to actually catching a fish, you have to be intentional. Is it called sonar? What's it called when you have a thing in your boat where it tells you where fish are? I don't know what it's called. Something. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? That little monitor that shows you what's under the boat? Yeah. Sure, that. It takes intentionality. You don't just go in the middle of the lake and just catch a million fish just because, maybe. I guess you could pick the perfect spot. My grandpa sure never did. He had to be intentional. He was good at fishing, but he had to be intentional. Right? So who's God calling you to reach? And how do you need to reposition yourself to be available to them? Or maybe the first step is, how do you need to reposition yourself to start to notice what's going on around you outside of our Christian walls, bubbles, things like that? How do we reposition ourselves to really see the hurting and the broken and the lost? And then when we see them, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to live our life? What kind of friend are we going to be? And you guys, those are the reasons we do Speed the Light. Because I want students to catch that too. I want to catch it too. I want my youth team to catch that as well. Because if we all start living missionally on purpose, with a purpose, with intention, our world's going to look a little different. So let's pray. God, we thank you for today. God, we thank you that you have called us to great things, and that with your help, God, we can become great fishers of men. God, I pray that you would help us to see the world around us. God, I pray that you would help us to see the needs, to see the hurt, to see the pain, to see the people that simply need us to be their friend. God, and I pray that we would step out and that we would allow you to use us to impact the world that we are in. God, that we would be intentional. God, that we would be sacrificial in our friendships. God, that we would not give up on the one. So I pray, God, that you would show us who is that person, who is the one that we are not supposed to give up on. Show us the people in our day-to-day life that simply just need a friendly smile, the simple things. And God, give us the courage to follow through when you do reveal those things to us. In your name we pray, amen. Really quick, as Pastor Taylor comes, what I didn't tell you guys, if you would like to partner with us for Speed the Light, please talk to me. You can give online. If you give online, there is a giving option for Speed the Light that you can give to today to kind of help our students as we continue to move forward with our Speed the Light goals. If you want to match a student, if you want to give us $1 million, like, you just let us know, and I will help you with partnering with Speed the Light and our students.